Welcome to episode 76 of the Peak Performance Podcast. I'm Brad Young, and today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating stories of human endurance and peak performance on the planet, the Tarahumar tribe of Mexico's Copper Canyon. These indigenous people have captivated researchers, athletes, and adventurers for decades with their seemingly superhuman ability to run hundreds of miles through rugged terrain, often in nothing more than handmade sandals. But what's truly remarkable isn't just what they do, it's how effortlessly they do it and what their example can teach us about unlocking our own potential for peak performance. The hidden runners of Copper Canyon. Nestled in the remote Sierra Madre Occidental mountains of northern Mexico lies a network of canyons 4 times larger than the Grand Canyon. This is Copper Canyon, home to the Rarámuri people, more commonly known as the Tarahumara. The name Rarámuri literally translates to those who run fast, or the running people, and it's not an exaggeration. For centuries, this indigenous community has maintained a way of life centered around running, not as exercise or sport, but as fundamental transportation, communication, and cultural identity. The Tarahumara live in one of the most rugged terrains imaginable. Their villages are scattered across vast distances, separated by deep canyons and steep mountain ridges. Before modern roads penetrated their territory, running was simply how they moved through their world. A Tarahumara runner might think nothing of covering 50 to 100 miles in a single day to visit relatives, trade goods, or participate in ceremonies. They run to hunt deer, literally chasing the animals to exhaustion over the course of days. And perhaps most famously, they play a traditional ball game called rarájipari that can last for 2 days straight and cover distances exceeding 100 miles. What makes the Tarahumara truly extraordinary isn't just the distances they cover, but the apparent ease with which they do it. While elite Western ultramarathoners push their bodies to the limit with carefully calculated nutrition, sophisticated gear, and intense training regimens, the Tarahumara simply run. They run through the night. They run laughing and talking. They run in their 70s and 80s with the same fluid grace they had in their 20s. They run in thin sandals made from old tire treads with no GPS watches, no energy gels, no compression gear. And they do it all while subsisting on a simple diet of corn, beans, and squash with very little meat or processed food. What makes them peak performers and lifetime conditioning? Tarahumara children begin running almost as soon as they can walk. By age 5, they're covering several miles daily. By adolescence, they're routinely running 20 to 30 miles. This lifelong progression builds cardiovascular systems, musculoskeletal structures, and movement patterns that are simply unmatched in sedentary societies. Natural biomechanics. Running in minimal footwear on varied terrain forces the Tarahumara to maintain perfect form. They land on their forefeet or midfeet, never heel striking. Their strides are short and quick. Their posture remains upright. These aren't techniques they learned. They're the natural consequences of running without cushioned shoes that allow lazy mechanics. Mental resilience. Perhaps most importantly, the Tarahumara don't see running as suffering to be endured. It's joyful, social, purposeful. They don't count miles or calculate pace. They don't dread the run or celebrate its end. Running is simply what they do, as natural as breathing, woven into the fabric of daily life and cultural identity. When scientists have studied the Tarahumara, they've found some physiological advantages: slightly enlarged hearts, efficient oxygen utilization, but nothing that fully explains their abilities. The truth is, the Tarahumara aren't genetic outliers. They're what humans are capable of when running is integrated into life from childhood, when natural movement patterns are preserved, and when the psychological barriers we construct around endurance are never built in the first place. The philosophy of Karima. To understand Tarahumara peak performance, we must first understand Karima, the philosophical and ethical foundation of their society. Karima roughly translates to shared sustenance or cooperative work, but it encompasses much more than these simple definitions suggest. It's a worldview in which the individual and the community are inseparable, where resources flow freely according to need, and where competition exists within a framework of cooperation and mutual support. In Tarahumara culture, you don't hoard food or resources when your neighbor has none. You don't refuse to help someone in need. You don't elevate yourself above the community. This philosophy extends directly to their running. When they race, yes, they compete fiercely. The rarájipari ball game involves teams, betting, and serious rivalry, but the purpose isn't to dominate or humiliate opponents. It's to push each other to excellence, to share in the joy of the effort, to strengthen community bonds through shared challenge. This stands in stark contrast to much of Western athletic culture, where competition often means crushing your opponents, where success is measured by how far you can rise above others, where performance is commodified and individualized. The Tarahumara model suggests an alternative, that peak performance might actually be enhanced, not hindered by connection and cooperation in community. When you run not just for yourself, but for something larger. When the people around you are collaborators rather than obstacles. When achievement is shared rather than hoarded, perhaps then the limits we think are fixed become suddenly movable. Diet of the distance runners. Corn, the foundation. The Tarahumara diet centers on corn, particularly in the form of pinole, a powder made from toasted ground corn. Mixed with water, it becomes a high carbohydrate drink that provides sustained energy. Before long runs, Tarahumara runners might consume nothing but pinole, sometimes adding a bit of chia seeds for additional nutrition and endurance. Beans and squash. These provide protein and additional complex carbohydrates. The traditional Three Sisters agriculture of corn, beans, and squash creates nutritionally complementary crops. Beans grow up corn stalks, squash spreads along the ground, and together they provide nearly complete nutrition. Chia seeds. Long before they became a Western superfood, chia seeds were a Tarahumara staple. Called ischiate, when mixed with water and lime, this drink provides omega-3 fatty acids, protein, fiber, and sustained energy without digestive distress during long efforts. Minimal animal protein. The Tarahumara eat meat rarely, perhaps once a week or less. When they do consume animal products, it's usually chicken or goat. Their diet is approximately 90% plant-based, contradicting the notion that heavy animal protein is necessary for elite endurance performance. What's striking about this diet is its simplicity and its timing. The Tarahumara aren't counting macros or timing nutrient intake windows. They're not consuming 30 different supplements. They're eating whole foods that humans have consumed for millennia, and they're eating them in patterns that support rather than complicate their running. It's a reminder that peak performance nutrition might be far simpler than the supplement industry would have us believe. The secret isn't in the legs. When Western runners first encountered the Tarahumara, they naturally assumed the secret to their endurance lay in their legs. Perhaps some genetic advantage in muscle fiber composition or cardiovascular capacity. But when researchers have tested the Tarahumara, they found their physiology to be remarkably similar to that of other populations. Their VO2 max values are good, but not exceptional. Their muscle composition shows nothing unusual. Their heart rates during long runs aren't dramatically lower than you'd expect from any well-trained endurance athlete. The real secret, it turns out, is in their feet, or more precisely, in the connection between their feet and the ground. The Tarahumara run in huaraches, simple sandals made from leather or rubber with a thin sole and minimal strapping. When you run in huaraches, you simply cannot heel strike without immediate painful feedback. You're forced to land on your forefoot or midfoot, with your foot directly beneath your center of mass. This natural running form reduces impact forces, engages the foot and lower leg as a natural spring system, and maintains forward momentum efficiently. Contrast this with the modern running shoe, with its elevated cushioned heel. These shoes allow us to run with terrible form, striking the ground heel first, far in front of our body's center, generating enormous impact forces that our joints and connective tissues must absorb. We've essentially built a piece of technology that allows us to override our body's natural feedback systems, running in ways that would be immediately painful and obviously inefficient without artificial cushioning. And then we wonder why running injuries are epidemic, why most runners can't imagine running more than 26 miles without months of specific training and risk of serious injury. The Tarahumara aren't superhuman. They're just running the way humans evolved to run before we improved the experience with technology that paradoxically made us worse at it. Building your Tarahumara training foundation. Start with walking. Before you run like a Tarahumara, you need to rebuild your foundation. Most of us have spent decades in supportive shoes, sitting in chairs, moving in limited patterns. Your feet, ankles, and lower legs need strengthening. Begin by walking barefoot as much as possible in your home, in your yard, on safe surfaces. This reawakens the muscles and proprioceptive feedback systems that modern footwear has allowed to atrophy. Minimal footwear transition. Once you're comfortable walking barefoot, start incorporating minimal shoes or Horak style sandals for short walks, then very short runs. Start with just 10 minutes, 2 to 3 times per week. Your calves will be sore. Your feet may ache. This is normal. You're using muscles that have been dormant. Increase gradually, never by more than 10% per week in time or distance. Focus on form. With minimal footwear, good form becomes non-negotiable. Land on your forefoot or midfoot directly beneath your body. Keep your steps quick and light. Aim for 170 to 180 steps per minute. Stay upright with a slight forward lean from the ankles, not the waist. If it hurts, you're doing it wrong. Pain is feedback. Listen to it. Build duration gradually. The Tarahumara build endurance not through intense interval training, but through consistent moderate effort running. Once you're comfortable with form, gradually extend your runs. Add time rather than speed. Aim to spend more minutes on your feet at a pace where you could hold a conversation. Be patient. This might take months or even a year before you're ready for longer efforts. The training week, a Tarahumara inspired schedule. Unlike modern training plans with their complex periodization, speed work, tempo runs, and recovery weeks, Tarahumara training is elegantly simple. They run most days at varying distances at a comfortable pace. They don't follow a schedule. They run when they need to go somewhere or when there's a reason to run, but we can extract principles from their approach and adapt them to our more structured lives. Here's what a Tarahumara inspired training week might look like for someone who's already built a minimal footwear foundation and is working toward ultra running capacity. Easy morning runs. 4 to 5 days per week, run for 30 to 60 minutes first thing in the morning. The pace should be truly easy, conversational, relaxed, enjoyable. This builds aerobic capacity and teaches your body to utilize fat for fuel. The Tarahumara often run before eating, and research supports the metabolic benefits of fasted, easy runs. Long run day. Once per week, extend one run significantly, 2 to 4 hours or more, depending on your current capacity. Like the Tarahumara, run on trails with varied terrain. Walk the steep uphills. The goal is time on feet, not pace. Bring minimal nutrition, perhaps some pinole or a drink, and practice running efficiently at low effort for extended periods. Active recovery. 1 to 2 days per week, either rest completely or do very light activity. Walking, gentle movement, stretching. The Tarahumara don't have formal rest days, but they also don't run hard every day. They move constantly, but not intensely, and they listen to their body's need for recovery. Social running. At least once per week, run with others. The Tarahumara almost always run in groups, talking and laughing. This keeps effort appropriate, makes the miles pass quickly, and reinforces that running is joyful and social, not solitary suffering. If you don't have running partners, join a local trail, running group, or club. Notice what's missing from this schedule. No speed work, no tempo runs, no intervals, no hill repeats. The Tarahumara don't do structured intensity. Their speed work comes from chasing after each other playfully during runs, from the varied terrain naturally providing challenging sections, from the rarájipari ball game providing organic competition. If you want to add some intensity, do it through play and variation, not through prescribed intervals. Fueling like the Tarahumara. One of the most counterintuitive aspects of Tarahumara peak performance is their nutrition strategy, or rather, their lack of complex nutrition strategy. While modern ultra runners obsess over precise calorie counts, carbohydrate to protein ratios, and timing their nutrition intake every 30 to 45 minutes, the Tarahumara approach is radically simple. For shorter runs, anything under a few hours, they often consume nothing at all, or perhaps just water. For longer efforts, they might drink pinole or isquiat, but not on any schedule. They eat when they're hungry, drink when they're thirsty, and trust their bodies to communicate needs. This isn't recklessness or ignorance, it's profound body literacy developed over a lifetime of movement. The Tarahumar have trained their metabolic systems to efficiently access stored fat for energy rather than depending on constant external carbohydrate input. Their predominantly plant based diet, rich in complex carbohydrates and fiber, provides sustained energy without blood sugar spikes and crashes. And critically, they've never trained their bodies to expect constant feeding during exercise, so they don't experience the bonking and digestive distress that plague many Western endurance athletes. You can adapt these principles without abandoning all sports nutrition. Start by extending the time you can run comfortably without food. If you currently eat every 30 minutes, try extending to 45 and then 60. Practice some of your easy runs completely fasted, teaching your body to access fat stores. Gradually shift your daily diet toward more whole plant foods, beans, whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and away from processed foods and heavy animal proteins. Make pinole yourself by toasting corn and grinding it, or use it as a base for pre run or during run nutrition. And most importantly, learn to distinguish true hunger and need from habitual feeding and anxiety about running out of energy. The rarájipari ball game. To truly understand Tarahumara running culture, you must understand rarájipari, a traditional ball game that represents the ultimate expression of their endurance capabilities and cultural values. The game is deceptively simple in concept: two teams, each with a small wooden ball about the size of a baseball. Players must kick their ball along a course that winds through canyons and over mountains, sometimes covering more than 100 miles. The team whose ball crosses the finish line first wins. The game can last anywhere from a few hours to 2 full days and nights. But Rarájipari is so much more than a game. It's a ceremony, a social event, a test of individual ability within collective effort. Villages prepare for weeks, crafting the balls from the wood of oak roots, laying out courses, organizing betting and celebrations. When game day arrives, the entire community participates: runners, supporters, children running alongside for the first miles, elders offering encouragement. Bonfires mark the course at night. Runners are accompanied by a karima, a helper who provides water, advice, and the all important task of finding the ball in the darkness or brush when it goes astray. What makes Rarájipari extraordinary is that it contains all the elements that make the Tarahumara such remarkable runners. There's the obvious physical challenge, covering impossible distances over rugged terrain, but there's also strategy, as teams must decide when to push the pace and when to conserve energy. There's cooperation, as team members must work together, alternating who kicks the ball. There's joy and playfulness, even in the midst of tremendous effort. And there's meaning. The game connects runners to tradition, to community, to something larger than individual achievement. Modern ultra running is beginning to rediscover some of these elements. Team relay races, destination events that celebrate local culture, running festivals that emphasize community over pure competition. These are all echoes of what the Tarahumara have always known: that endurance is most sustainable and most fulfilling when it's joyful, social, and meaningful, rather than solitary and purely achievement focused. Terrain as teacher. Vertical gain. The Tarahumara's mountainous homeland means constant elevation change. Uphills build power and cardiovascular capacity. Downhills teach controlled speed and eccentric strength. Running only on flat ground develops limited capability. Technical surfaces. Navigating rocks, roots, loose scree, and creek crossings demands constant attention and adaptation. Every step is slightly different, engaging stabilizer muscles and maintaining neural activation. This prevents the mindless repetition that leads to overuse injuries on roads and tracks. Varied routes. The Tarahumara don't run the same path repeatedly. Every journey has a purpose and a destination. This keeps running mentally engaging and physically balanced, preventing the neuromuscular grooves that come from identical daily routes. If you live in a flat area, you'll need to be creative. Seek out whatever hills you have, even if they're short. Repeats up a short hill provide excellent training. Use stairs. Change your routes constantly. Most importantly, get off the roads and onto trails whenever possible. The varied terrain does more for your running development than any sophisticated training plan. The mental game, running without ego. Perhaps the most profound lesson from the Tarahumar isn't physical at all, it's psychological. In Western running culture, we're obsessed with metrics. We track our pace, our distance, our heart rate, our vertical gain, our calories burned. We set PRs and chase them relentlessly. We compare ourselves to others constantly. We construct elaborate frameworks of goals and achievements, and we measure our worth as runners against these arbitrary standards. And in doing so, we create enormous psychological pressure that often makes running feel like work, like suffering, like something to be endured rather than enjoyed. The Tarahumara don't track anything. They don't know their pace per mile. They don't care how their performance compares to last year or to the runner next to them, except in the specific context of a race or game. They don't run to achieve. They run because running is what they do. It's woven into their identity so fundamentally that it requires no justification, no external validation, no proof of worth. This egoless approach to running might seem impossible for those of us raised in achievement-oriented cultures. But consider, when you remove the performance pressure, what's left? The pure experience of movement, the joy of being outside, of physical capability, of going somewhere under your own power, the satisfaction of effort for its own sake, the pleasure of moving with others. When you stop caring about whether you're getting faster or whether you're good enough, you paradoxically often perform better because you're no longer fighting psychological resistance. Try this. Do some runs with no watch, no tracking, no plan. Just go out and run by feel for as long as feels good. Notice how different it feels when you're not checking your pace every quarter mile. Run with someone slower than you and stay with them, focusing on conversation rather than effort. Enter a race with no time goal, just the intention to experience the event fully. See what happens when you give yourself permission to run purely for the experience rather than the achievement. Adapting Tarahumara principles to modern life. Morning routine. The Tarahumara often run before dawn, before eating. You don't need to run 2 hours, but try 20 to 30 minutes of easy running first thing. It energizes your day, requires less willpower than evening runs, and trains fat metabolism. Keep it truly easy. This isn't workout time, it's movement time. Transportation running. The Tarahumara run to get places. You can too. Run to work if possible, or at least part way. Run to do errands. Run to meet friends. When running has a purpose beyond exercise, it becomes functional rather than optional, and you'll naturally accumulate more running volume. Minimal equipment. You don't need the latest GPS watch, heart rate monitor, and compression gear. You need comfortable minimal shoes, weather appropriate clothing, and perhaps a simple way to carry water. The Tarahumara proved that performance comes from the runner, not the equipment. Simplify. Social integration and make running social whenever possible. Instead of meeting friends for coffee, meet for a run, then coffee. Include your family. Children naturally love to run and play. Join a running club or organize informal group runs. When running is social, it becomes sustainable. Joyful competition. If you race, approach it like rarájipari. Compete fiercely but joyfully. Support fellow runners. See the event as celebration rather than judgment. Don't let racing become a source of anxiety or self worth measurement. It's play, not work. Lifetime perspective. The Tarahumara run from childhood through old age. This isn't about peak performance in your 20s, then decline. It's about sustainable practice over decades. Make choices that will allow you to run at 70, not choices that maximize speed at 30 but lead to injury and burnout. Common mistakes in Tarahumara style training. As the story of the Tarahumar has spread through books like Born to Run and increasing media coverage, many runners have attempted to adopt their methods. Unfortunately, this often leads to injury and frustration because people misunderstand the approach or try to change too much too quickly. The Tarahumar's abilities are built over a lifetime. You cannot download their capacity in a few months. Here are the most common mistakes and how to avoid them. Transitioning to minimal footwear too quickly. This is by far the most common error. People read about the Tarahumaras huarachis and immediately throw away their supportive shoes, then try to run their normal mileage in minimal shoes or barefoot. Result: stress fractures, severe calf and Achilles tendon damage, plantar fasciitis. The transition must be gradual, starting with just minutes per day and building over many months. Your feet and lower legs need time to strengthen, maintaining intensity while increasing volume. The Tarahumara run high volume but low intensity. Many runners try to add more miles while maintaining their hard speed workouts and races. This leads to overtraining and burnout. If you're increasing volume significantly, reduce intensity. Focus on easy conversational running for most of your miles. Ignoring the dietary foundation. You can't expect to run like the Tarahumara while eating a standard Western diet high in processed foods, sugar, and animal products. Their plant based whole food diet is integral to their endurance capacity. You don't need to change everything overnight, but movement toward more whole grains, beans, and vegetables is essential. Skipping the lifestyle integration. The Tarahumara don't train for running separate from their lives. Running is their life. Transportation, play, social time, cultural practice. If you only run as formal exercise, isolated from the rest of your life, you'll struggle to build real endurance. Find ways to integrate running into daily living, not just as separate workout sessions. The role of Tesquino. No discussion of Tarahumara culture would be complete without mentioning Tesquino, a fermented corn beer that plays a central role in their social and ceremonial life. Before you dismiss this as tangential to peak performance, consider the Tarahumara regularly consume Tesquino before, during, and after long runs, including the multi-day rarájipari ball games. This challenges Western assumptions about alcohol and athletic performance, but it also reveals important truths about recovery, community, and the holistic nature of their running practice. Tesquino is a mild beer, typically only about 3 to 5% alcohol, made from sprouted corn that's been boiled, fermented, and flavored with wild herbs. In Tarahumara society, it's much more than a drink. It's a social lubricant, a ceremonial offering, a form of payment for communal work, and a way of sharing resources. Tesquino parties called Tesquinadas bring communities together regularly for work parties, celebrations, and social bonding. The drinking isn't about intoxication, it's about connection. From a performance perspective, Tesquino provides several benefits. The fermentation process increases the bioavailability of nutrients from corn. The mild alcohol has anti inflammatory properties. The social context of drinking together reduces stress and strengthens community bonds. And perhaps most importantly, the relaxed celebratory atmosphere of Tesquinadas embodies the Tarahumara philosophy that running in life should be joyful, not purely utilitarian. The lesson here isn't that you should drink beer before ultramarathons, it's that peak performance exists within a larger context of community, celebration, and balance. The Western tendency to optimize every aspect of training and recovery, to eliminate anything that doesn't directly enhance performance, can paradoxically undermine sustainable excellence by making athletic pursuits joyless and isolated. The Tarahumara remind us that performance and pleasure aren't opposites. They're complementary aspects of a well-lived life. Training through the seasons, spring building volume. As days lengthen and weather warms, gradually increase your running volume. This is the time to extend long runs, add an extra day per week if you've been running 3 to 4 days, and start incorporating more challenging terrain. The Tarahumara naturally run more as agricultural work demands increase in spring. Summer, maintaining through heat. In the intense heat of Copper Canyon summers, the Tarahumara often run very early morning or evening and they back off on volume slightly. Follow this wisdom. Don't try to maintain peak volume in extreme heat. Run during cooler times to stay hydrated and accept that some reduction in volume is appropriate and wise. Fall, peak performance. Cooler temperatures and the cultural importance of fall harvest season mean this is when the Tarahumara often engage in their longest runs and biggest rarájipari games. If you're going to attempt a longer distance event or push your boundaries, fall is ideal. Your summer base is solid, temperatures are pleasant, and you have months of training behind you. Winter, active recovery. While Copper Canyon winters are mild, the Tarahumara still reduce running volume during this season. Use winter for active recovery, maintain running frequency, but reduce intensity and volume. Focus on form, strength, and enjoying the process rather than pushing limits. This cyclical approach prevents burnout and allows for decades of sustainable running. The power of going slow to go long. One of the most counterintuitive aspects of Tarahumara running, especially for competitive Western runners, is the pace. When researchers and runners have followed the Tarahumara during their long runs, they're consistently surprised by how slow they go. A Tarahumara runner covering 50 miles isn't maintaining an 8-minute per mile pace. They're often running your 11 to 13 minutes per mile, sometimes even slower. They walk the steepest uphills. They stop to chat. They maintain a rhythm that feels almost leisurely, and yet they cover distances that would destroy most runners. How? The answer lies in understanding aerobic efficiency and the difference between speed and endurance. When you run at truly easy efforts, keeping your heart rate in zone 2, maintaining conversational pace, your body develops massive aerobic capacity. Your mitochondria multiply. Your capillary networks expand. Your body becomes extraordinarily efficient at utilizing oxygen and fat for fuel. These adaptations take time but create nearly limitless endurance. Conversely, when you run most of your miles at moderate to hard efforts, what feels like a comfortable training pace to many runners, you're in a metabolic no man's land. You're not running hard enough to create the stimulus for significant speed improvement, but you're running too hard to maximize aerobic development. You're accumulating fatigue that limits your total volume, and you're teaching your body to depend on carbohydrate metabolism rather than the far more abundant fat stores. The Tarahumara naturally run at easy efforts because that's what allows them to run frequently and far. They're not constrained by training plans that tell them they must hit certain paces. They run by feel, and the feel that allows them to cover the most ground is relaxed and comfortable. If you want to build Tarahumara level endurance, you must embrace truly easy running for the vast majority of your miles. This requires ego dissolution, accepting that your easy pace might be 2 to 3 minutes per mile slower than your race pace and being comfortable with that gap. Speed without endurance is useless for ultra distances. Endurance without excessive fatigue is the foundation of everything. Bringing it all together, your 12-week progression. You now understand the principles of Tarahumara running: minimal footwear, natural form, high volume, at low intensity, varied terrain, plant-based fueling, joyful approach, and community integration. But how do you actually implement this? Here's a 12-week progression that moves you toward Tarahumara-style training while respecting the need for gradual adaptation. This assumes you're already running consistently but want to shift toward their model. Weeks 1 to 4. Foundation shift. Begin incorporating minimal footwear for 10 to 20% of your running. Do this only on easy days, on smooth trails or grass. Focus on form. Quick light steps, forefoot, midfoot landing. Slow down significantly. Add 1 day of walking in minimal shoes. Start shifting diet toward more whole plant foods. Most importantly, remove your watch for at least one run per week. Run purely by feel. Weeks 5 to 8, volume building. Increase minimal footwear. Running to 30 to 40% of weekly volume. Add 15 to 20 minutes to your weekly long run. Introduce a second easy run on one of your previous rest days. Seek out more varied terrain. Prioritize trails over roads. Practice some fasted morning runs. Join a running group for at least one run per week. Your weekly volume should increase by roughly 10% from weeks 1 to 4, but all added volume should be easy effort. Weeks 9 to 12. Integration. Move to 60 to 80% minimal footwear running if your feet and legs feel strong. Extend your long run to 3 to 4 hours if your schedule allows. Add a 4th or 5th easy running day. Experiment with running as transportation. Run to locations instead of driving when feasible. Create a Pinot routine for your long runs. Most importantly, assess your relationship with running. Is it feeling more joyful, less like work? If not, you're pushing too hard or approaching it wrong. The Tarahumara laugh while they run. After these 12 weeks, you'll have established a solid foundation for Tarahumara style running. From here, continue the same principles. Gradual volume increases, consistent easy effort, varied terrain, minimal equipment, joyful approach. Remember, the Tarahumara build their capacity over decades, not months. Patience is essential. Beyond running, the Tarahumara way of life. The final and perhaps most important lesson from the Tarahumara is that their running prowess cannot be separated from their entire way of life. They're peak performers not just in running, but in creating a sustainable, meaningful existence that supports human flourishing. When we talk about the Tarahumara as ultra runners, we're pulling one thread from a rich tapestry, and that thread is inseparable from the whole cloth. Consider the broader context of Tarahumara life. They live simply. With minimal material possessions and minimal environmental impact, they grow most of their own food through traditional agriculture that works with natural cycles rather than fighting them. They spend extensive time outdoors in physical activity. They maintain strong community bonds through regular gatherings, shared work, and mutual support. They have rich cultural traditions, music, storytelling, crafts, ceremonies that provide meaning and continuity. They're not rushed, not overscheduled, not constantly stimulated by screens and information. They have time to simply be. This lifestyle isn't romantic primitivism. The Tarahumara face real hardships, including poverty, limited health care, and encroachment on their lands. But there's no denying that certain aspects of their way of life are healthier than modern Western patterns. The chronic diseases that plague developed nations, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, depression, anxiety, are largely absent in traditional Tarahumara communities. Their running ability is just one manifestation of a life lived in better alignment with human biological and psychological needs. You cannot and probably should not try to fully replicate Tarahumara life. You exist in a different cultural and economic context, but you can ask yourself, what aspects of my life support peak performance and well-being, and what aspects undermine it? Am I moving my body frequently and naturally? Am I eating real food? Am I spending time in nature? Am I building strong relationships? Am I engaged in meaningful work? Am I getting adequate rest? Do I have practices that bring joy rather than just optimize productivity? Peak performance isn't just about what you do during training runs. It's about creating a life that makes peak performance natural and sustainable rather than forced and fragile. The Tarahumara remind us that exceptional physical capacity emerges from a foundation of simple, wholesome living, not from complex training hacks or expensive supplements or obsessive optimization. When the foundation is right, performance follows naturally. The journey forward. So here we are at the end of this episode, but really at the beginning of your journey with Tarahumara principles. You've learned about a people who prove that humans are capable of extraordinary endurance when we run the way our bodies evolved to run, when we fuel ourselves with simple whole foods, when we make running a joyful part of daily life rather than isolated suffering, when we embed our efforts in community and meaning. The path forward is both simple and challenging. Simple because the principles are clear: minimal footwear, natural form, high volume, at easy effort, varied terrain, plant based fueling, patient progression, joyful approach. Challenging because these principles require patience in a culture that demands immediate results, require simplicity in a culture that sells complexity, require community in a culture that glorifies individual achievement, require joy in a culture that equates worthwhile with difficult. Start small. Pick one principle and implement it this week. Maybe it's running one day in minimal shoes. Maybe it's removing your watch for one run and going purely by feel. Maybe it's making pinole and trying it as pre run fuel. Maybe it's finding one person to run with regularly. One small change, consistently applied, is more powerful than grand plans that never get implemented. As you progress, remember what the Tarahumara prove: that humans are designed for endurance, that running can be sustainable for a lifetime, that peak performance emerges from whole life health rather than isolated training, that the journey itself, the daily run, the time in nature, the movement with others, is the reward, not just the destination. They run because it's who they are. That can be true for you too. This is Brad Young reminding you that peak performance isn't about becoming superhuman. It's about becoming fully human, expressing the capabilities that were there all along, waiting to be rediscovered. Until next time, run far, run easy, run joyfully, and maybe, just maybe, run in Horrocks.